NVIDIA has laid out its plan to manipulate the market, and here's proof. That is what Jay's 2 cents is saying today. Let's get it going. Is he pandering to his audience after the snafu with the buy NVIDIA GPUs now? It's as cheap as they're going to be.
All eagerly awaiting some news regarding 40 series and 30 series, what's happening with 30 series and all that. And GTC is later this month, so that's typically where we find out some news. But we've got some direct insight here on what to expect from NVIDIA CEO himself. Of course, we're talking about Jensen, because they just had in August their Q2 earnings for 2022 sales call or earnings call with investors. There's some very eye-opening information in here. Some might, I don't think anyone's gonna see this as good when it comes to the consumer. So I think it's important that we talk about this.
We interrupt this video to bring you a special message from iFixit. No, we interrupt this interruption with this interruption about new stuff from iFixit anywhere but your pockets aren't big enough. Introducing you to More and for yourself.
At the risk of putting myself in the crosshairs once again of NVIDIA and you guys, I'm gonna go ahead and do this video. I've talked about all of the information we're gonna share here in the RTFM show, which is our weekly podcast on Fridays. But a lot of folks told me this should be a video, and seeing what people believe is about to happen, because it's all been speculation, versus what he's saying is actually gonna happen here, I just feel like I need everyone to sort of sync up on the information there. Now, I'm not giving price predictions, I'm not giving you my opinion on any of whether you should buy it or not. This is directly about what NVIDIA is planning to do from the CEO himself. So there's no...
Well, I mean, we already talked about it today. Like, so they're going to be doing what they did with the 20 series with the 30 series, right? Which is once the 20 series launched, or the 30 series launched, they repurposed a bunch of 20 series GPUs. The only difference now is that mining isn't a thing, so there's not as much demand for these parts, right? Like, that's how I see it.
No speculation here. This is directly out of his mouth. It's a fairly decent sized quote, and I'll be kind of breaking it down as we go here. And forgive me if you're on the RTFM show and you've already heard this, but I think it's important that we talk about it.
Our strategy is to reduce the sell-in this quarter, next quarter, to let channel inventory correct. You know, obviously we're off the highs, and the macro condition turns sharply worse. And so our first strategy is to reduce sell-in in the next couple of quarters to correct channel inventory. We've also instituted programs to price position our current products to prepare for next generation products.
I want to go ahead and give you guys some definitions here. That way there's no interpretation. This is just straight up facts, okay? What is sell-in? Well, sell-in is defined as the state of goods to retail traders prior to public retailing. So basically, an example of sell-in would be NVIDIA sells the GPU technology to the AIBs. So anyone that makes an NVIDIA graphics card that's not NVIDIA itself is considered where that sell-in goes. Because NVIDIA does sell graphics cards direct, but they're in the main business of selling technology to other brands and other companies. That's specifically the GeForce name itself. So that would be companies like Asus, that'd be companies like Gigabyte, EVGA, ASRock. I keep mentioning ASRock, I don't know why. They do make some graphics cards, but anyway, I digress. I think they might make AMD. This quarter and next quarter, and by this quarter and next quarter, he's referring to Q3, Q4, by the way. Q2's happened. He's in Q3 when he's saying this. So he's already telling you that they're going to reduce the sell-in, which means not sell as much product direct to other manufacturers to let channel inventory correct. Now remember, a channel is any pipeline where that product moves through, whether it be from NVIDIA to the AIB and then the AIB to the retailers. Remember, the AIB is in between the manufacturer and the retailer, so we're talking sell-in here, or to SIs or anyone that would sell the final product. Now, to let channel inventory correct, I'm gonna change the word correct to be manipulated. Now let's talk about the definition of manipulate. To handle or to control, typically in a skillful manner. There's another one here, to control or influence, cleverly, unfairly, or unscrupulously. Now here's the problem, the word manipulate.
So like he's saying, like, essentially, I mean, but like, I don't know. At the same time, like, we're fully aware what the issue is, and NVIDIA doesn't want to completely flood the market. I think it's inevitable that the market gets flooded though, right? At the same time? Like, we understand why it's happening. It's because they can't have too many products on the market. Otherwise, everything gets sold at a loss, right?
It can be used in a good way or in a bad way. It's like, hey, Nick, manipulate that light so it looks good. Or, hey, manipulate that light so it makes me look less fat. Now I'm controlling the way you see me, not necessarily in a bad way, but you might not agree, right? Kind of a bad example, but if I go ahead and retranslate that first sentence, our strategy is to sell less product this quarter and next quarter to let channel inventory be manipulated to keep prices where they are or even higher. Okay. What he's been
right. Yeah. That's pretty much, this was what I just said, right? I think there's an argument for saying though that it's still correcting the inventory by like reducing it. I guess you could say manipulate, right? Whether or not you agree with it. There's like a negative connotation to manipulate there, which is kind of the part that I'm trying to decide if, because all companies are going to do this when that happens, right? Like if you were like if you were manufacturing a bunch of, or the masks are a good example, right? You're manufacturing a bunch of masks. And so there's a ton of masks on the market now post-COVID because not as many people are using masks. You're going to reduce the amount of masks that you're producing, right? So that's not dissimilar to what's happening with the crypto or in the GPU market with crypto mining and all that, which is, right, like we've overproduced a bunch of GPUs because of the crypto market. Now we don't have as much of a demand for them, so we're going to basically produce less GPUs, right? The problem that NVIDIA is in is that we know that they have next-gen architecture and GPUs ready to go, but they have a whole bunch of old stock left over from the 30 series, right? Plus old parts that go into those 30 series, which is why earlier today we saw them announce 3 new GPUs for OEMs. And they're trying to get rid of them fast. So how are they getting rid of them fast? Well, they're selling them direct to OEMs, right? And then potentially selling some to GPU miners if there are any GPU miners left that are purchasing at that scale.
Basically saying here is that they are not going to sell as much product direct into the market. That way they can keep the prices where they are. Now you might be going, why would they do that? All the rumors have said they're not going to sell 40 series because they have this influx and surplus of 30 series. So if that were true, why would he be hanging on to 30 series? He says, obviously we're off the highs. Talking about the highs of profits, not just the highs of like being in business. It's fun in a pandemic when things are hard to get and we can sell it for whatever we want. That's the high they're actually talking about. And the macro condition turned sharply worse. That turning sharp.
Yeah, they were basically able to overcharge everybody because not only because of cryptocurrency mining, but also because there were shortages in the market due to the pandemic or to the lockdowns or whatever, which is absolute insanity, really, if you think about it, like manipulating a poor situation for everybody else. But now we're getting to the point to where the economy is getting into a terrible spot, right? Like where not only is it kind of not like clearly not as profitable for people to purchase GPUs for crypto mining because the economy is suffering and the markets are suffering, etc. But people aren't going to be purchasing GPUs for playing video games, right? Like all of your standard typical like entertainment costs and spending go down in an economy that is functioning poorly, right? People are going to instead, buy gas and groceries, that sort of thing. We're already seeing, like in China, a huge issue with sell-offs of the GPUs and a decline in the GPU market and actually just gaming PC market in general. We saw this basically in the Tech Yes City video, YouTube video that came out last week, maybe a week and a half ago, something like that, where you see that basically gaming PCs sales in China have gone down by 60%, decreased by 60%, right? Which is, it's a huge market over there. And that's because they're suffering economically, right? Because they're having a housing crisis essentially at this point. And as that continues to go through everywhere, right? Which it clearly is, like recessions, like every downturn on all the markets. Like these highs are like, it's literally going from like the highs to like the lowest of lows, right? The highest of highs to the lowest of lows.
Worse was that basically overnight change where things just dropped in price because of cryptocurrency falling, availability going up. Clearly they can't profit like they were there.
And so our first strategy is to reduce sell-in the next couple of quarters to correct channel inventory.
So he repeated himself, basically what I just said. They're not gonna sell as much to keep inventory low, supply and demand, to keep prices up. Because if they keep shoveling inventory into the market, it's like printing more money. You devalue the dollar or any currency if you just keep flooding the market with it. So they're actually holding back the inventory that they have a surplus of, which is weird, but if we read on, you'll understand why.
We've also instituted programs to price position our current products to prepare for next generation products.
I can go ahead and translate that one. We've also instituted price corrections with our partners for our current 30 series to prepare for 40 series products. So what they've done is they allowed the channel inventory and the flood of it to bring prices down intentionally, not just to sell them, because if the goal was to sell them, they would keep flooding the market with it, making them cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and then people would buy. So many of you said you're not buying because you're not paying MSRP for a 2-year-old card, and that's perfectly fair. But if they were really trying to get rid of these, they would want to recoup any costs that they could, blow them out at half off or whatever, and then just move on to 40 series. But here he said they're limiting or manipulating the market by not selling in as much product. So they were basically watching the prices to get them where they wanted, because they want to have the price compared to 40 series makes sense. So they flooded the market, prices came down, and now that they're about where they want them, they're now reducing the sell-in so that prices don't drop lower. The whole reason for that was not to sell them at a lower price. It was to make the price of 30 series versus 40 series make sense. For instance, we currently at this day and time making this video have a $979 RTX 3090 at Micro Center. Now the 3090 was a $1,500 card at MSRP, and they were as much as $1,700, $1,800 for custom cards. That's half price right there, right? But the idea about that is if you can bring the 3090 price down and you can have it coexist with a 40 series card that is faster, and if it's 20% faster and it costs 20% more, price to performance then makes sense. If you have a 30 series that's gonna cost $1,500, and you have a 40 series that costs $1,400 or $1,500 at the same price, and one's faster than the other, it would make no sense to buy the older one if it's slower in the same price. So they've manipulated the market by the sell-in, or at least trying to manipulate the market by the sell-in, to bring the prices down so that they can layer in 40 series cards. This is kind of the first time we've seen them do this and actually have a previous generation coexist for a length of time after a new generation exists. Because he actually goes on to say that.
Well, no, they kind of did that with the 20 series and the 30 series. The only difference is that you had basically extremely high demand and low supply. So now what they're doing is essentially doing the same strategy they did with the 20 series and the 30 series, but they're doing that with the opposite effect: high supply, low demand. Potentially, provided like something doesn't happen with shortages wise and all that, right? Which it sounds like they almost want shortages to happen at this point. Mr. Boy said, today I got the power bill last month with 10 cents a kilowatt hour after tax. Now it's 50 cents a kilowatt hour after tax. Yeah, they're absolutely, I mean, I feel you. It seems to be happening everywhere. Selling your rigs. Thank you, Polish government. Man, bro, I'm sorry. Do you have any reason for that? Is it all taxes? Let's get back into finishing this because I will be clipping this later for YouTube.
Here. And this is where they kind of go with their own like tooting of their own horns. You know,
Ampere is the most popular GPU we've ever created.
He said
Ampere is the most popular GPU we've ever created because it came during a bull run in the cryptocurrency market and ETH was still or mineable, right? Like not only that, but everybody was moving to work from home, right? So everybody was investing in computer parts, right? Tons of people were put out of a job and stuck at home with essentially free money from the government to drop on PC parts, etc.
Said that basically about every generation that's ever launched. So the newest generation's always, you know, the one going out has always been the best, and this one's gonna be even better. That's kind of the mantra.
Yeah, Russia's not charging you more. They got sanctioned, so the U.S. and NATO are charging you more, Mr. Boy. If we're being completely honest.
There.
However, we do have
Chadwick's
exciting
correct.
new next generation coming, and it's going to be layered on top of that.
So there is the coexistence I just talked about. One of the things we've always seen is NVIDIA able to strategically stop the sell-in. Or
I will say real quick, guys, you got to be really, really careful with that point of view because, you know, that's not the liberal narrative going on right now.
stop the manufacturing so the sell-in just naturally stops on its own prior to a new launch. Never in the past have we seen them have this kind of surplus going into another generation. So now they have to coexist, or they just have to eat the 30 series or destroy them or just throw them in a warehouse. I don't know. They don't have any more miners to sell them to at this point, I guess. That's part of the problem here.
And so we've done two things. We've reduced sell-in to let channel inventory correct, and we've implemented programs with our partners to price position the products in the channel in preparation for our next generation.
So the prices that you're seeing are intentional by NVIDIA, not to sell them as fast or as quickly as possible, which so many people, including myself, believed. It's so that the prices make sense compared to 40 series because they're going to exist at the same time. I'm gonna pause.
Yeah, they're manipulating, and we saw this because just today, like we just talked about, right? Like they are creating 3 new 30 series GPUs to basically slot in where they need them to slot in. Why would you come out with a 3060 Ti with better memory performance than an RTX 3070 at the end of a GPU cycle?
Pause it there for a second. It's actually good news for a lot of people waiting for 40 series. The only thing is, if what we're seeing here is true, and the prices at which we're seeing them at now, it doesn't sound like they're going to continue to drop if his plan for reducing sell-in and correcting the inventory and correcting the market then means it's not.
So Detroit asks, like, why use GDDR6X if the 40 series needs it? Because it's not the same GDDR6X. The GDDR6X that is going into the 3060 Ti will be the slower 19 gigabit per second to 21 gigabit per second GDDR6X overstock of it. It is a separate manufacturing. The new GDDR6X is running at 24 gigabits per second. It'll be in the 40 series. Yeah. That's the difference.
Potentially get much lower, if lower at all, because he's actually doing this on purpose. Especially if they're going to be existing during 40 series. Because let's say you don't want to go buy a 4080. Remember, we don't...
Keys Beast, what if the 3060 Ti with GDDR6X comes out with light hash rate? Which it presumably will. Because, which is freaking hilarious, because the only thing that it'll combat against is Ethereum Classic and Ergo. But more than likely, it is going to be light hash rate GPU on the 3060 Ti. Because they already released a new driver that added it back in after the 100% unlock. And boy, you need to look up and understand that it's not just Poland that's getting a majority of your energy from Russia, but Germany's about to really get hit. So is pretty much all of the UK or that entire area.
Know what they're going to launch. Are they gonna launch 4090 and 4080, 4080, 4070, 4090 later? We never know. It's kind of weird. We know they start at the top range and then work their way down. So if you don't...
And they did it to themselves by shutting off all of their nuclear plants. I don't know what the EU was thinking. That was wild. Let's be completely dependent on Russia. That way when they invade someplace, we have no way to provide for ourselves. This is why I like when people get, and I know this is a tangent because I'm trying to reply to this too, but this is why when people are like, try to make fun of Texas for being like energy dependent. I'm like, you guys have no idea how important that is. Energy independence, even at a state level, is freedom. That means if you're in that state, like if you're in a country that's energy independent, then you're more likely to have freedom. If you're in a state within a country that's energy independent, you're even closer to freedom. Because as soon as you're dependent on somebody, you have to do what they want, right? And energy is like pretty much the number one thing in the entire world that everybody fights over all the time.
If you're not going to be looking at buying a 4080 and you just want a mainstream card, 3060 is going to be kind of your only option. And we already know 3060s didn't really come down in price. They became available. They went back to MSRP. But now if 3060, 3070, 3050 is your only mainstream card that's going to exist because of the top-down launch and it's going to coexist with 40 series, then pricing's landing exactly where they want them to. It's just funny that he goes on to say 3 different times in this one paragraph about the reducing sell-in and letting the channel inventory correct. Basically, that means supply and demand. Let's make the demand go up and the supply constrained, artificially constrained. They're holding back. Now look, this is free market. This is capitalism. He can do whatever he wants with this. It's up to you as a consumer to decide if you're okay with that. This kind of stuff happens in every single industry though. So if you're gonna be mad at Nvidia about this, you kind of have to be mad at everybody. I'm talking like obviously Sony and Microsoft with Xbox and car inventory. I mean, all this stuff. It's just this is the way it works, and it sucks. But it's rare that we actually get to see it directly called out, just in the public like this, to say, hey, we're manipulating the market. They can choose to set those 30 series cards on fire if they want. Obviously, they're not doing that, but they have the freedom to do that.
All of this, we anticipate we're working towards a path to be in a good shape going into next year. Okay, so that's what our game plan is.
So we now know for the next 2 quarters.
Well, the reason he has to do that, the reason why they're just like straight up coming out and being like, look, we're manipulating this way, and this is why, is because Nvidia is about to have really poor performance charts to show to their shareholders. And so they have to have an answer to get out of it. And their only answer to get out of that is to be like, look, this is what we're doing to manipulate the pricing. Right? Like they're literally financially forced.
Hey, good money.
They're being financially forced to come out with this information, right? Thanks for the follow, Tom Linson.
They're going to be doing this market, quote unquote, inventory manipulation. It's up to you to decide if the word manipulate is a positive or a negative or a neutral term, but it really is the correct term to use here. That also means that the rumors about not seeing 40 series until...
Well, I think it's fair to say that using the term manipulation will always have a negative connotation, Jay. So... I don't think that there's anybody over there like running around that's like, you know what I think's good? Manipulation. I don't think anybody's running around saying that.
2023, it sounds going into next year. We're in good shape going into next year. To me, that sounds like 40 series is launching in the next year. Now you might be saying, well, no, he's just talking about profits for the next year. Well, there's another quote.
In gaming, our partners and ecosystem are responsible.
Thanks for the Twitch Prime sub, Kuja. Helping keep the dream alive over here.
to a sudden slowdown in consumer demand and correcting channel inventory. Still,
well, who thinks manipulation's a good word, right? Like they're not using it in here, but it's clear that that's what they're using when they're talking about their earnings call and they're talking to shareholders. So who thinks the actual manipulation, the action of manipulation, there are people that think the action of manipulation is good, and that is the shareholders, right? So when we're talking to like the general public, right? Nobody's going to say manipulation is good. But like if we're talking about like shareholders, like clearly rich people think manipulation of the markets is good if it benefits them.
fundamentals of gaming are strong. We'll get through this over the next few months and go into next year with our new architecture.
So there you go. One, we'll get through this. It's like, they sound like they're in trouble. They sound like they're, oh my God, things are terrible. No, they've been on a 2-year high of selling whatever they want for whatever price they want to anyone they want. Just, they had all the control. They had all the stuff everybody wanted. They could.
Yeah, but what are we learning with these market downturns? So this is one thing my dad said to me that's always good, that helps me, especially right now. And maybe it'll help you guys too. There's always wisdom in talking to your elders. He said, the bad times are never as bad as you think they are, but in addition to that, the good times are never as good as you think they are either, right? How does that impact the market right now, right? Like if we talk about good times versus bad times, and what that means. Well, when the times were really good last year, right? You should have been aware that they weren't as good as you thought they were, because stuff was going to get really, really bad coming up really, really quickly. So you need to be more disciplined during the good times to put yourself into a good position for the bad times. They weren't as good because why? Well, in a year's time, you were going to go from paying $2 a gallon for gas to $4 a gallon per gas. And you're going to go from paying 5.5 cents a kilowatt hour to 50 cents a kilowatt hour. And it was going to happen within a couple months, which means that those good times, those good times were good, but they weren't as good as you thought, because you needed to be putting yourself into a position to be able to afford the bad times. And this is super important, because if NVIDIA didn't put themselves in a position to survive the bad times, and now they're having to report to shareholders, then they're in a pickle. We see this also with all of the Bitcoin miners and all of that were, buying out, like pre-ordering Bitcoin miners for $10,000 a pop last year that aren't even going to be ready till this year. And the value of those miners is now like $3,000, $4,000, right? They're paying $96 a terahash for miners that weren't even ready yet, because times were so good then to where they've screwed themselves. So no, yes, NVIDIA is probably in a terrible position right now. They probably had been showing their shareholders like projections for Q4 or whatever that assumed that the markets weren't going to crash and whatever. And now they got to be like, well, that's actually not happening. It's worse than ever now, right? Like, this is worse than ever now. So here's what we're doing to manipulate it, to try to like salvage some of it, right? This is what we're doing to like try to salvage some of it.
Sell it for whatever they wanted, and they always got it. That's not the case anymore. Obviously, the last few months have shown that pendulum has swung back to the consumer having all the control. And so now what you're seeing is Jensen intentionally adjusting artificially the supply and demand to be able to manipulate the market back to where he wants it. So that's what the whole, like, we'll get through this. It just sounds like the most disconnected comment I've ever heard from someone. And you saw that he said it.
Go into next year with our new architecture.
So you can expect now not to see anything concrete. You'll see some teasers at GTC. GTC historically is not where NVIDIA launches its new gamer cards. It's where it launches.
Well, when he's saying we'll get through this, he's specifically saying that he's talking to his shareholders.
It's AI tech, or shows off its AI tech. It's super deep learning. It's super high-end supercomputer server stuff that they've always shown. The 100 series stuff has always been shown at GTC. But when it comes to the GeForce stuff, we always get a kind of an insight of what to expect at GTC because it usually utilizes very shaved down versions of the same type of tech. So that's why he's talking about GTC. So a lot of people have taken this statement and ran with 40 series is launching in September at GTC. It's like, I highly doubt that. But whatever, moving forward. In terms of launch availability, he said here multiple times that this plan regarding layering is going into next year. So he plans on spending the next 2 months, or excuse me, next 2 quarters. He says it right up here. We're gonna reduce sell-in in the next couple of quarters. A couple means 2, right? To prepare or to correct channel inventory. So this is a 180-day plan regarding 30 series, sell-in reduction, channel inventory correction / manipulation, price control, to layer in with 40 series. So he's obviously had to come up with a plan to say, okay, 40 series and 30 series have to exist at the same time. Because if you're an investor, you want the latest thing out because you know that's gonna be your moneymaker, right? You're gonna want that out. The new stuff that you have to show keeps you ahead of the competition. AMD has already said you can expect RDNA 3 in 2022. And I don't personally believe that NVIDIA has any concerns about AMD. I believe NVIDIA is just that much in their own world that the competition to them is not competition at all. So
yeah, and I think NVIDIA is going to get themselves in a lot of trouble because I think the 7000 series is absolutely going to just smash even Ada Lovelace.
I don't think AMD launching anything in 2022 is a true concern to AMD or to NVIDIA. I truly don't believe the leadership thinks that's a problem. But as a consumer, obviously, enough people have adopted RDNA to be able to say, hey, I think people might switch over. But if you looked at the aisles at Micro Center anytime we went during the shortage, you would see an entire rack full of AMD cards and an empty shelf of NVIDIA cards. Now, whether or not that was through that channel inventory control or manipulation to keep those prices up and AMD was just sending what they had, now we have to question in the last 2 years exactly how much of this was part of this channel manipulation versus actual supply and demand.
Well, it was more than channel manipulation. It was that they could sell in huge bulk quantities to cryptocurrency miners and make a bulk majority of their money, right? Like that's what we found out. They were even building specific cards for HUD 8, for example, right? Like we know this was happening. And then if you were able to, like, let's just put like, it's pretty simple, right? Like, let's say you're manufacturing, I don't know, cups. Like, let's say I'm manufacturing cups and I have the option to send these cups and sell one to each one of you here, right? That means I got to ship each one out individually, or I have the option to take these cups and sell them to a restaurant in bulk. I'm going to sell it to a restaurant in bulk, even if it's at a price discount, because I have a larger amount of inventory that I'm able to ship and get out the door. So that's what NVIDIA was doing.
Demand. Who knows how much of that stuff actually made it to the...
I mean, that's even what they admitted they're going to be doing with these 3 new Ampere GPUs too. The new 3060, the new 3070 Ti, and the new 3060 Ti, right?
Market because of sidebar deals and stuff. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, apparently there's rumors about millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of direct sales to miners and such, which makes all...
Well, that's not even a rumor. HUD 8 came out and confirmed that, right? So we know that HUD 8 already confirmed that.
All of this just seem more suspect. Like I said, at the risk of putting myself in the crosshairs of NVIDIA again, especially as we go into 40 series here, and obviously we want to review the card, but I think more people need to be talking about this. The fact that, look, if you're waiting for 30 series, my initial statement of buy now because it won't be there when 40 series comes, that was clearly flat out wrong and false because this happened after that video by a month. And now here he is saying that they're going to coexist and layer. So I think a lot of us were expecting 30 series to just kind of sit around and trickle away as 40 series came out. Now it sounds like they're going to be around for a bit. At least one quarter of coexistence. Because if they do launch at around the first of the year, December announcement, January launch, that's 1 quarter from now. We're in Q3 right now. We have all of Q4. And that would all mean all of Q1 2023 would be when you're starting to see the 30 series sort of phase out. So he says it right here. They've intentionally held back the sell-in or how much of the market, the inventory they're allowing to make it through channels to keep the price where it's at. Because if they keep sending it, then the price will continue to drop. So there is direct price manipulation channel market manipulation.
That
Look, and I
ergo
keep saying
flux
manipulation.
and flux
It really is
control.
the definition once again here. I think people are going to hear manipulate and just think like, especially the NVIDIA fanboys, they're going to hear this and be like, oh, they can do whatever they want. Of course they can. But manipulate, the very first definition is to
Yeah, Jay, we get it. We get it as manipulation. We
direct
understand
selling,
that.
not just NVIDIA themselves, but AIBs that were.
I mean, we get the point. I mean, like, obviously, like, we agree with him. There's a couple parts where I'm a little curious. I'm wondering what's happening because he says that NVIDIA doesn't care, correct me if I'm wrong, and this is one where I disagree. He's saying that NVIDIA doesn't care if AMD comes out with the 7000 series first in September. AMD has pretty much said they're going to be launching RDNA 3 in 2022. He's saying that they're not going to release Ada Lovelace, the RTX 4000 series, until 2023 due to this 180-day price manipulation plan for the 30 series from Jensen, which means we wouldn't see it till 2023. And that is confirmed because NVIDIA is so far up their own asses that they don't consider AMD competition enough to want to release a next-gen GPU, top-end GPU, around the same time that AMD launches their next-gen top-end GPU. Which to me is like, I don't know. That's a far stretch. Like, you're telling me that there's going to be a 7950X XT out here that's going to absolutely decimate anything else on the market. And NVIDIA's going to be like, no, we're going to wait another 180 days to release our competition to that. I don't see that happening. I definitely disagree with that as far as Jay goes here. That's how I feel about it. Give me 1 second. I'm taking a bio break. I do have a meeting coming up here, but I want to do a proper sign out. 1 sec, though. It's too much coffee. All right, yeah, that's my alarm to get out of here. That's my alarm, but we got a little bit of time. Let me catch up on what you guys got going. White Sword, I haven't seen you in forever, so that's pretty cool. Is the S in reference to the White Sword? No, it's Superman, sir. So thanks for all the new follows and thanks for the subs today. I think we're getting closer. We're 184 out of 200 subs for our sub goal, so that'd be cool. If we can get closer to that. So definitely not Iris says is waiting until after Christmas. Smart sales model though. Yeah, there's multiple issues with this whole idea of the 40 series not coming out until 2023. I think like I think the 7000 series is going to look really, really good, and people aren't going to buy in. Look, here's the deal. If they launch like the 7900 XT at 6900 XT prices, which is $999, $1,000, and it has the performance improvements we're expecting from it, it's going to absolutely decimate the 3090, and nobody's going to pay $949 for a 3090 if they can pay $999 for a fucking 7900 XT. It's just not going to happen. It'd be absolutely ridiculous to think that anybody would make that purchase decision. Like, it just doesn't make sense.